Alright, so we've got our first database, which started from here and then looked like the second one I had. And for the second part, what you are supposed to do is populate data. So this is the next part of your assignment. You need to use Amazon.com to gather metadata for 10 books, videos, or albums. This is after you create your first database, and you can pick whatever you want. It can be of any different types. It doesn't have to be library quality metadata. The point is just to play around and explore. Don't beat yourself to death about having everything look super pretty and super neat. And what you're going to do is next you're going to put the data for 10 items into your Access database. So this is something I had a little bit of trouble with before, but what I had to do to actually create a duplicate copy is I took my first copy of this, my first Access database, and I copied and pasted it, and then renamed it Task 2, because for some reason Access doesn't allow you, or at least this version doesn't allow you to save the same version of the file, or save it as a new title or a new name. My guess is it has to do with security reasons, because some people use very large databases locally or on the web with Access. So just keep that in mind. So what you'll do is you'll copy and paste that, name it Task 2 Truman Tiger, and then you will enter in your metadata. So in this case, I just have 4 files in here, but here is more or less how you go about the process. In my case, I went to Amazon.com, and I wanted to find The Old Man and the Sea. So I looked up The Old Man and the Sea. It's by Ernest Hemingway. And using the data on the website, I had more than enough to fill out most of the Dublin Core fields. Now, I believe we've already gone over what Dublin Core is and some of the content about how you enter it and the descriptive standards and the input standards, and some people are going to have more experience than this with others. If you don't have a lot of experience, I'd say look at Table 1 of the doc file or the PDF file that I've provided for you for this assignment, and Table 2, which is a journal article as a representative example in Dublin Core, and use that to kind of give you an idea of exactly how to enter the data. So down here at the bottom we've got all the elements, a description of what goes in each field, and then on the right we've got the refinement or encoding process. So for the subjects, the Library of Congress authority headings for subjects, you can use those to standardize what's entered in. Type, the type or nature of the resource, we have Dublin Core file types or data types or information types that you can enter in. We have date standards, which are adopted by the WC3, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. We have standard format types, also presented by the W3C Consortium. And then we have, of course, identifier, which is a URL, URI, ISBN, and then language codes, which can be language or county, which is done typically in MARC. So you don't have to use these. I did. It definitely makes the information retrieval process better later on. But for now, just keep those in mind, play around with some of it, and think about entering data in according to different ways. So, for example, what I did is I have The Old Man and the Sea, and I entered that in. I created my subject field, and I entered literature. But then you'll notice over here to the right, we have subject 2 and subject 3. Well, why do I have that? Part of the reason is I want to create 2 or 3 different places where subject headings can be retrieved later on. Because let's face it, literature is not the only subject heading that fits with The Old Man and the Sea. So I've created 2 extra ones, and I named them subject 2 and subject 3 to I know what they are. They're repeatable fields allowed in Dublin Core, but I just didn't go ahead and create more than them because I thought that was enough. So I entered in literature, fiction, sea adventure, and then under description, what I did is I took the synopsis right here and copied and pasted that over. The type, it's text because it's a book. The source, I do not have a relation. For the geographic or time coverage, I added Cuba because the story is about somebody from Cuba. The creator or author was Ernest Hemingway. The publisher in this case was Scribner Publishing. The date when the book was published was January 5th, 1995. This wasn't the original, it was actually a reprint, so that's arguable if it needs to be that way or not. We've got the format, which is a book, an identifier, which is the ISBN, and then I actually created a second identifier, which linked back to the data source within Amazon. So you're going to go through and do this for 10 different files for all 15 fields, and it's basically just a matter of entering in the data. So let's say I want to enter in a book right now. I go, cats and dogs. The subject is cats, and the secondary subject is dogs, and the description is a book about cats and dogs. Now, over here, of course, it's text. And then the relation, we don't have any on there right now. Coverage, none. Author, I wrote it. Not really, but let's say. Publisher, it's not been published yet. It's a manuscript. Rights, nobody's gonna care about it anyway. And besides, I'd have it be open source or have everything under a free license to the public. Some date, 2/27/2014. Let's have it be an ebook. And then there you go. So what you're going to do is you're going to do this for your files, fill in as many fields as you can, but at the same time try and add as much diversity among the content, because what this will do is it'll make the information retrieval process a lot better later on, and it'll make it a lot more fun to kind of learn how query-based systems actually operate. And in this case, I just went ahead and clicked yes, I want to delete the records. So after you've done all of this, you click save, and you're going to save it as Task2 Truman Tiger, which you have already done. Alright, so by now you're getting into the home stretch. The question is, how do you export this stuff into a single database that everybody in the class has? Well, you're going to be using shared files in Dropbox, and I'll get to that in a second, but for now I want to touch a little bit more on how database administrators exchange or share data between databases. Not all databases are the same, so there's a huge difference. So in this case, I'm going to introduce you to two very simple options. One is a .csv file, which is essentially a .txt or plain text file with commas in between the values, and XML, which is a structured type of markup language that basically takes up more file size, but it has some advantages over a flat file as well. So the first thing that you need to do once you get your 10 records is I want you to save your database as a .csv flat file. So to do this, you've got your database like this here. You go to Fields, or not Fields, go to Database Tools, and then go to right here, which is Export to Text File, because remember, a .csv is a flat plain text file. So click there, and it'll bring this up. Do not click Export Data with Formatting and Layout, because that is something that's purely graphical. We're worried about figuring out how to interchange data between database systems. So we're not going to mess with that. We've got the name here. It's going to be Task 3, Truman Tiger. And then don't click on anything. It's a .txt, which is okay, but you don't save it yet, so click OK. And it'll come up with a prompt. And it says, the wizard allows you to specify details on how Microsoft Access should export your data. Which export format would you like? There's fixed width, which means that there are columns or tabs between fields, and then there's delimited fields. So there are comma delimited fields, semicolon delimited fields, different ways. It's basically just an indicator telling the system, okay, this particular set of data ends, let's go to the next one. So we're going with a tab delimited field, a comma is there. Up here we have a text qualifier which shows what's text. You see the quotation marks, just leave that on. Comma's fine, don't need anything else, click next. And then now we can name it here. So that's all the information the wizard needs. Make sure at the end to name it, instead of a .txt, name it a CSV. and click Finish. So if you look there, it's got that, and congratulations, you have taken the first step toward exporting data. Now, going back here to the screen, you'll see Task 3, Tumen Tracker, and Task 4. So this shows up as a Microsoft Excel file, partially because Excel allows you to import CSV files. We don't want to look at it that way. We want to look at it with just Notepad. And if you open it in Notepad, you'll notice this is all my metadata with a comma, quotation marks, and another comma and quotation marks. And then you see 3, 6, 7. Those are the unique identifiers for each row within the database table. So what you can do is, in plain text, export this information between all your databases or most types. This is the easiest way to do it. It's not the best way all the time, but it's a very powerful, simple way to store and transfer data in a standardized format.